Hey everyone, this is how to take apart and reassemble your Smith & Wesson 1854. You'll need a T20 and a T10 bit for this. First, you want to clear the firearm, of course, and open the action. Remove the lever retaining screw, then you can remove the lever. To remove the bolt, you'll need to push the hammer completely down and hold it while moving the bolt backwards. Now you can remove the ejector by simply lifting up on it. This can be removed with tweezers, needle nose pliers, or very narrow fingers. Next, we're going to remove the handguard by unscrewing both sides of the retaining collar. Then remove the magazine tube by twisting the end to unlock it and pull it forward. The collar will slide off at the end. You can also choose to remove the mag tube first and then undo the collar if you choose to do so. Now you can lift the handguard at the forward end and it should lift from the receiver. Now unscrew the buttstock screw. This will be the longest screw for the 1854. Simply pull the buttstock off of the receiver. This will have some friction, so it may need a wiggle. Remove the carrier screw, then the hammer screw. The hammer screw will be under tension, so once it is completely unscrewed, it will need to be lightly tapped out of the receiver. Then it could be pulled out. Now remove the trigger group retaining screw. You'll notice the entire trigger plate starting to free itself. Then remove the trigger guard plate screw that sits underneath the receiver. Now the entire trigger group is free and can be removed from the bottom. First, the trigger guard plate, followed by the hammer and the mainspring, then the carrier and locking bolt. For reassembly, we're going to start with the carrier. It can only go into the receiver in one direction. You'll know it's correct when placing the carrier back into the receiver. The end with the hole for the retaining screw will be seated into the narrow channel towards where the hammer sits. The locking bolt can go in next. And keep in mind, this can also only go in one direction. One side of the gap is larger than the other within the receiver. This will slot over the carrier. Now we can lock it in place by screwing in the carrier screw. Then we could drop in the hammer, followed by the trigger guard plate, and rotate the receiver so it sits on its side to make this a little bit easier and make sure the trigger is sticking completely straight and not laying flat. We need to make sure that the trigger can engage the hammer by sticking out. Put the trigger guard plate screw back in and this will start to hold things together but not everything. So screw the trigger group set screw on the other side of the receiver. Now we can put the hammer screw back in, but make sure the screw hole is unobstructed by moving the hammer around to get it aligned properly. Remember, there is tension on the hammer screw, so it will need some tapping. Once you've engaged the screw into the hammer and trigger holes, gently tap it back in to get that screw to the threads, but gently. Try using a smaller hammer if you have one so you don't blow past the threads and shear them. Make sure that the hammer is engaging the trigger by moving the hammer. You should see the trigger slightly moving back and forth. Next, slide the mainspring over the hammer rod. Then fit the mainspring plate over the hammer rod. There is a hole for the rod to pass through the plate. The bent part of the plate will be at the top and the straight side will be on the bottom to catch into the mainspring plate groove. To compress the spring, I use a narrow rod, which is just a bore cleaning rod extension. I face the rifle down and pull down on the rod over the plate until it catches into that groove. Again, function check the hammer once it's all done. Now we can slide on the buttstock, screw in the buttstock screw back into place, pop the handguard back in with the receiver side going first, attach the handguard retaining collar back over the handguard, and screw back into place. Insert the mag tube and twist to lock it. Place the ejector back into the notch pointing to the opposite side of the ejection port. There is a small hole that the notch will pop into. Use the pliers or tweezers to seat into place. Keep in mind that it will be held in place with the bolt, so it doesn't have to be seated completely. Take the grooved side of the bolt and slide it back into the receiver by pushing and holding down on the hammer and sliding that groove on the bolt over the ejector. Once the bolt is halfway through the ejection port, you can slide in the lever to engage the bolt. Make sure the bolt is forward enough to put the lever back in. Function check by moving the lever back and forth to see if the bolt is moving with it. Then you can put the lever screw back in place. Function check again with some dummy rounds and make sure it all works. I hope this was helpful to y'all. Have fun out there.